Welcome and good morning, Father Ron from US, and good morning in Philippines and good night in US. And welcome to this podcast, HEAN KLEAN Rowing into the Deep. I am honored and grateful to have you on this podcast to share your vocation story and some of your thoughts and insights about faith. So, as you all know that Father Ron is a well-known priest, as a Roman Catholic priest. He's an author to many books, especially The Holy Loaning, The Deeper, Sacred Fire, Domestic Monastery, and The Shatter of Lantern, and Restless Heart. And the other books, he's an author of many books, and he's a religious. So once again, Father, welcome and good evening in US. Welcome and good morning, Father Ron from US.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you.
So without further ado, Father, I am Ilo Jesuita, a scholastic from Timor-Leste, but currently I am studying in Philippines, Loyal House of Studies Ateneo de Manila. So I'm studying philosophy here in Philippines. So once again, thank you very much for your uh, time and opportunity to have you on my podcast. So the first question, Father, would you share a bit of information about yourself? What is your name? Where are you from? And what is your current mission now, Father?
Okay, well, I'm an Oblate priest, Oblate Missionary of Mary Immaculate, Father Ronald Rolheiser. I'm a Canadian, but right now, for the last 20 years, I'm working at our Oblate University in San Antonio, Texas. I came here originally, I was president of the school for 15 years, but I stepped down as president. Now I'm a full-time teacher, a professor in spirituality. I teach courses in spirituality, and I direct doctoral thesis. We have one of the few doctoral programs in all of the United States on spirituality, on Catholic spirituality. We have students from every kind of denomination. That's about half my work directing thesis. The other half is to do with teaching, still writing books and writing a newspaper column and so on. Keeps me busy. And also during my years as a missionary, when I was a general counsel, I got to the Philippines probably 4 or 5 times. So I'm familiar with the Philippines. I'm familiar with balut.
That's good. That's for me is a scary things that I won't ever
Yeah.
taste.
It's scary for me too. Okay.
So, Father, when did you hear the first call of the Lord upon you, Father?
Well, it's interesting when you say call, sometimes you have it implicitly for a long time before it gets explicit. But probably from my earliest youth, it was an implicit call, but I was fighting it, you know. It's a bit. I was thinking 12 years old when I was confirmed, and I can remember at confirmation day all those years back, something triggered. But then all through high school, I didn't want to be a priest. I did not want to be a priest. The life didn't appeal to me. Celibacy doesn't appeal to anybody, and so on. But then when I graduated from high school, my last year, it came on me as a call, as a clear. You're called to do this, whether you want to or not. So I made the decision. You won't believe this. I was 17 years old, and I made this decision, and it's still the clearest decision and most selfish decision I've made in my whole life. It's just kind of, God wants me to do this. It's not important whether I want to do it. I need to do this. And the life has worked out well. Just from the earliest times on, looking at it from the outside, the life didn't look good. From the inside, it's always been good. I enjoyed the studies as a seminarian. I've enjoyed all the ministry as a priest. I've enjoyed, I look back now, I have no regrets. But for me, it came on not so much as an attraction. I wasn't attracted. It came on as a call. Kind of, you're asked to do this, and I responded to it, and it's the best thing I've ever done.
So maybe, Father, you can explain a little bit about between the call and the attraction. So because you mentioned about I'm not attract, but this is a call. So can you explore a bit about it, Father?
Well, you know, like for instance, I've been in this business now for a long time. Some people will join a religious order or go to a diocese and so on, and they're attracted to the priesthood. I had an older brother. He was attracted to the priesthood. You know, he became a priest. He was attracted to it. I was never attracted to it. You know, it's not something I would have picked. It picked me, you know, and so it came on kind of. In fact, I was resisting. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. You know, I want to go to university. I want to become a psychologist. You know, I want to get married. I want to have kids, and you know, and so but it's kind of like I had this sense I'm being asked to do this. And you know, it sounds funny when you're 17 years old. You know, you think you're young, you know, but it was clear, and it's clear to this day. And then I realized it had always been there. So he said, "When was your earliest call?" So for me, you know, see, a call to priesthood or stuff can come in different ways. Some people are attracted to it, or religious life, or women are attracted to the sisterhood. I want to become a sister. Some aren't, and they're called to it. You know, like it's almost like you want to. I realized in my resistance, there was the call. The fact that I was fighting it tells you something. You know, when my brother was 2 years older than I, and they were interested, and he said, I might become a priest. He was all, you know, he didn't have to call. And every time the vocation director came and said, no, I don't want to see you. It's not for me, you know. But then I realized that the very fighting indicates something, you know. See, so, you know, not everybody is called in the same way. Some people they're attracted, you know. Like, you know, I know you're probably familiar with the famous theologian Henry Nouwen, you know. But as a little boy, they'd make him mass vestments, and he played being a priest. He had this tremendous, that was never for me, you know. I mean, I was a good Catholic kid and so on, but the priesthood didn't attract me at all, you know. But it came upon me, said, you need to do this. You need to do this, you know. You realize you're existentially free. God doesn't twist your arm, you know. But the call came to me very clearly. And then I realized my very resistance was part of the call. The fact that I was fighting it, you know, I don't know if you study Shakespeare over there. At Shakespeare, the famous line, he said, methinks the lady protests too much. When you're protesting too much, it means, you know, they have a hook on you.
So, Father, because you mentioned about I can say you have no desire to become a priesthood, but later on you find out that, oh, I feel a call, so I respond to it. So, how was the reaction of your family when you decided to enter the religious life? They agreed or they
Oh
disagreed
no,
with the
they were
decision?
happy. They were happy. You know, I grew up, first of all, my parents, they liked religion. I had an older brother who was already a priest, you know, and a sister who was a nun. They were very happy. In fact, I belong to a Catholic generation, you know, the boomer generation. But for every young man or every woman was asked the question, you should look whether you need to be a priest or a sister, you know. And so it was always there. So my mother put the question to me, no pressure, but you should ask yourself, are you called to be a priest? You know. So they were happy, you know, and
So,
very
Father,
supportive.
have you ever fallen in love before entering the religious life?
Well, you know, in high school you fall in love, but it's at a distance. I've fallen in love sometimes since, you know, and very strongly. And that's probably been the biggest challenge. I've always been happy as a priest in the work I'm doing, but sometimes you fall in love and you realize you can't act on this, you know. And I'll be honest, that's been the biggest cross inside of my priesthood, you know. I can say openly I've been faithful, but at a great cost sometimes. You know, you sometimes you have to sweat blood to stay in this vocation.
So how do you uh, see the vows? They shape your life to freely love and serve the Lord, or are they as a burden to you, Father?
Well, celibacy is it's a paradoxical thing. Let me say something that sounds negative and then it's positive. Like Thomas Merton, famous monk, he was once asked, this journalist said, "What's celibacy like?" He said, "It's hell." He said, "Celibacy is hell." He said, "You live in a loneliness that God condemned. God said it's not good for the man to be alone." So, said, but it can be very fruitful. It's you don't have that intimacy of a one-to-one. You don't have a sexual relationship. You don't have but you have a different kind of family intimacy with hundreds of people. Like you renounce having your own family, but in a certain sense, everybody you work with becomes a family. And so you're part of many families. So it's paradoxical on the one hand, and I don't underplay this. Every healthy man or woman is going to fall in love and be attracted, and celibacy is an unnatural state. But like Merton said, it doesn't mean it can't be a very fruitful state. And the fact that it's hard is part of its fruitfulness. It's supposed to be hard. So that you renounce that one-to-one intimacy for a wider intimacy. And when you understand that, it's kind of you can see why Jesus was a celibate. You got to love everybody. I give you a line I heard from a rock singer. Janis Joplin was a very famous American rock singer. And she was once asked, someone said to her, "What's it like being, like you go up on a stage and you all these people adulate you?" And she said, "It's actually really hard." And then she coined this expression. She said, you don't know what it's like to go on a stage and you make love to 10,000 people and you go home and sleep alone. See, that's the celibate thing. You're going to make love to everybody and you're going to sleep alone. See, so that's the great paradox of celibacy.
So Father, looking back now your past life, many decades ago, till now, what is your most grateful for as a religious life? Is there something that you feel regret or always thankful for things that you have done in your life as a religious?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good question, but I'm going to answer it in a way that seems like I'm avoiding the question, but no. See, like, okay, I'm 77 years old. So I have been I joined at 17. I've been a religious life really for 60 years. When I look back now, I said, I'm glad with the way it's turned out. It's good. There were hard moments and so on. So there's individual periods where it's hard and so on, but I can look back now and say, I'm glad with the way my life turned out, and I'm deeply grateful for that. So now I'm grateful that I was called, and I'm grateful I answered. So that you say, well, are there regrets? There isn't a big regret. No, I'm very grateful that I answered. I'm very grateful the way it all turned out, the way God has blessed my life, and so on. There were some painful moments. There were some painful years. There were some painful issues, but they kind of wash clean over the hall, that the overall thing, there's not a regret,
So Father, I heard one of your talk on YouTube. So you mentioned about chastity, and there is important 3 points that is respect, reverence, and respect. Can you explain a little bit about respect, reverence, and respect in chastity, Father?
Yeah, a good question. Like chastity, the word has a bad connotation in secular culture. It's chastity, they think you're uptight, that there's some frigidity to you or so on. No, but chastity, the image of chastity in scripture, and chastity is not the same thing as celibacy. You can be celibate but not chaste. You can be married and be chaste. chastity is, like I say, it's proper reverence, proper respect, proper patience, and so on. But the image that I use is, Moses before the burning bush, where God says, "Take off your shoes, because the ground you're standing on is holy ground." That basically, an image I use. I just wrote a book on chastity and so on, and I use an image of a book in there from Nikos Kazantzakis, the famous Greek writer, and he says one time he was watching a moth come out of its cocoon. Like moths, it's a worm.
Mm-hmm.
And he was watching this, fascinated. This thing is slowly coming out of its cocoon. But he said it got too slow. And then he lost patience. So he took some heater and he just heated it so it worked faster. Then it worked faster, but then because it came out prematurely, the moth couldn't fly. See, in all our relationships, respect, waiting, so, I can say this and back it up. All sins, every sin against any one commandment, they're ultimately sins of irreverence. All sins, you're not properly respecting something or somebody, so that chastity, it's respect. Today in the United States, and I'm sure you have it over there too, they call the Me Too movement, where women are saying, that's actually a movement for chastity. They're saying, respect me for who I am. Okay? Like I'm not somebody's toy. I'm not somebody's plaything, or not somebody's sexual object. You got to respect who I am. But all impatience is, any irreverence is a fault in chastity, and it's badly needed. We're a world that there isn't a lot of respect. There isn't a lot of patience.
Father, I am so interesting to know about some of your books that the title is really helpful and very meaningful and reflective also about the holy learning and sacred fire. So can you give general idea about what is
Yeah.
really holy learning and sacred fire means for Christian, for the people, Father?
Yeah. Okay. Actually, those two books, they're volume 1, volume 2, and actually volume 3 is just coming out, But, in the spiritual life, we have 3 major phases. The first one is just the struggle to get your life together. From the time you're born, you're a baby and kid and school and so on. It takes 20 years, it takes 25 years. And that's a big struggle to get your life together. Who am I? Who loves me? How to be educated and so on. That's the first struggle. That's the holy longing, See, and then at a certain point you land, you get married, you become a seminarian, you get ordained or whatever. See, and then you have an identity. Then for the next 50 years, your job is to give your life away. That's sacred fire. See, holy longing is how do you get your life together? Sacred fire is how do you give your life away? I have a new book coming out at the end of this month called Insane for the Light. It's how do you give your death away? How do you die so that your death is a blessing? But where that the image of longing and fire is this. I'm sure you have that in your seminary training. It comes from St. Augustine. The deepest thing inside of us, you've made us for yourself, Lord. Our hearts are restless till they rest in you. We're born and we got this fire inside of us. And first the fire drives us. We got to set our lives together. Then the fire keeps driving us and we have to give our lives away, Then the fire keeps driving us, and sooner or later we got to die and give our deaths away. But like for younger readers, I'd say start with the holy longing, once you're ordained, then pick up sacred fire and say, how do I do 50 years of ministry now?
So for
And
you,
then
for you
when you're in the
personally, for you personally, what leads you to write this book, Holy Learning and Sacred Fire, Father?
Well, it's a good question. All of your writing ultimately partly comes out of your own life, but I teach courses on spirituality, and I teach 2 different courses on the great mystic John of the Cross. And actually, I got that structure from him. He has a different language, dark night of the senses, dark night of the spirit, and so on. But really, it translates into the first struggle, darkness. How do you get your life together? And then proficiency. How do you give your life away? Then dark night of the spirit. How do you die properly, or how do you spend your retirement years so that when you go away, you leave a good spirit behind? And so the structure comes from the great classical mystics. And so I just I put an anthropological and psychological, structure to it, but that actually comes from classical Christian mysticism, but it fits, it fits life. You understand? I don't know what age you are, but you struggle to get your life together. Then you struggle to give your life away. And then when you retire and so on, what happens then? You're in the seniors' home, you're in assisted living. How do you do that? What's your vocation then?
Questions that is really more on the reality now, is many people are confused about their life decision, what to do and how to do it. They doubt about God's existence. And what advice do you want to give as a word of encouragement, hopeful for those who are hopeless and desperate, Father?
Well, put it this way. You pray and you hope that people come to an explicit faith. But if they don't, it's okay too. I'm going to give you a funny image now. You know what we call a GPS when you're driving, and it says in 50 yards, turn right, then turn left, and so on. And notice, no matter how many times you disobey it, it doesn't give up on you. It doesn't say, well, you're an idiot, I'll stop, Like you can disobey it, say, turn right in 30 feet. You don't turn. Then the thing just gently recalculating. Okay, well, that's God. See, explicit faith in the church, they're the greatest GPS on the planet. But if you're not following it, God is going to get you there. Constantly recalculating. Now do this, you do that, and so on. My faith is in God, and God loves everybody, and God is going to be fair to everybody, and that you pray that people find explicit faith to get them home without a lot of wrong turns. But I would put it this way: the majority of people aren't going to go to hell. God is going to find a way. Recalculating and recalculating.
So, Father, what is your hope for the church to, especially now in digitalized, so people are busy and preoccupied with the modern world. So what is your hope for the church to help the people to go back to the church, or to accept the reality that we are living in the world, but we also belong to heaven or to God. So what can you explain a bit about it, Father?
Well, that's the $1 million question. No, really, that's the question we're all searching for. And liberals, conservatives have a different answer. See, the conservatives saying we got to go back. If we have Latin mass or we have really strict, people will come back, and the liberals say, well, no, we have to reach out in different ways and so on. See, so that nobody has the answer. We disagree on the answer, and I don't have an answer. I really believe that, God will show us the way, but right now we don't know the way. And, if you study church history, the church has been at this place before, and how they came out of it was, like, for instance, Francis of Assisi suddenly appears, and he gives a new imagination to it. Or Dominic appears, or Clare of Assisi, or something, where all of a sudden a great saint or somebody would appear, and they had the vision. And then it would renew itself, and so on. And maybe that's what we need. Maybe you can be the new Francis of the Philippines. Okay.
Francis of East Timor.
Yeah, East Timor and so on. See that in the meantime, what we have to do is we have to just be faithful, live out the truth as best we can understand it. But I would be pretentious if I said, well, this is the answer. No, that's the most important question. But we're all trying. We have pastoral councils and synodality and all kinds of things where everybody is searching for an answer. We don't have one. And we have strengths and weaknesses. So I'll give you an example. Right now in our spirituality, we have a lot of evangelicals in our, Now it's interesting. Evangelicals right now in the Western world have strength Roman Catholics don't, and classical Protestants. They are getting a lot of young people, but their struggle is to keep their people, because they don't have the Eucharist, See, in Roman Catholicism, our great strength is the Eucharist, and we hold people with the Eucharist, but our struggle right now is to get young people. So, and we need to sort this out together. Like, it's interesting. They are more able to get young people than we are, but they really struggle to hold, In fact, that's why a lot of them come to our school. They say, like, one guy came as a minister, said, I started 26 searches, but I burned out, and half the people, I said, they're on fire, and then the fire goes out and they leave, He said, I want to learn about Catholicism and, what are the deeper wells to spirituality, about the saints and so on, and especially the Eucharist. As Roman Catholics and the larger Protestant churches, our big strength is the Eucharist. That holds us. And a lot of Protestant churches don't have it. And, I'll give you an example. There's a evangelical minister, very famous in the United States, called Rick Warren. And he has the biggest mega church in California called the Saddleback Church. And I heard him speak in Los Angeles at a Catholic conference. And he said, something? He said, I have thousands of Roman Catholics who come to my congregation. He said, but most of them don't stay. They come for a few years to hear the preaching, then they go back to the Eucharist. He said, you have that great treasure. So in the meantime, keep doing the Eucharist and keep searching with everybody, I mean, that's the $1 million question, how do we do and what do we do? But we don't have an answer right now. And Catholics, liberals and conservatives, they have different answers. One says we haven't gone far enough. One says we've gone too far,
So in a sense, I can say that while we're still on earth, there is always a holy learning. So young people nowadays, they learn to have something that they like, or like they go to Protestant because Protestants, most of their celebration is concert. So young people like concert. So they also like concert because it attracts many people. But as Father mentioned that there is no Eucharist. So people go and come back. So I think it's really, really important to know that while we're still journeying, we're still wholly learning to search for the meaning. And at the end, we realize that the truth is the really Eucharist. For me, the truth is really Eucharist. Eucharist really gives me strength, gives me hope, and gives me healing. So I find it very meaningful. So Father, maybe can you explain a little bit about what is really the importance of the Eucharist for us?
Okay. That would be, that's a big question, but I can give you some important pieces, First of all, the Eucharist, I wrote a book on the Eucharist and I called it Our One Great Act of Fidelity. And I stole that line from a British theologian called Ronald Knox. And he said this. Ronald Knox says, he said, we haven't been faithful to Jesus, really. He said, we don't love our enemies. We don't turn the other cheek. We don't do half the things Jesus said, but we've been faithful in one great way. We've kept the Eucharist going. Jesus said, keep the Eucharist till I come back. 2,000 years later, we've got the Eucharist going, and it holds us. And that's going to save us, But the other thing is, we had an evangelical, very famous minister, David Gushue, who teaches in Mercer University. give one of our lectures here, and some of the evangelicals said, like, why do our churches keep splitting? He said, because we don't make the Eucharist the center. And he said this, said, all preaching is partisan, no matter how carefully you do it. You're going to come down liberal, conservative, you're going to come down MAGA or woke, or all preaching is partisan. The only thing that's not partisan is the Eucharist. You can be a liberal, you can be conservative, you can be this, you can be whatever, and you can still go to the same Eucharist. You can't listen to the same preacher, you know. So it's the great treasure. And it's interesting, you know, when you walk in a Catholic church, every Catholic church, notice at the very center is the altar. And then the pulpit, the word is very important, but that's to the side. In Protestant and evangelical churches, it's reversed. You walk in, and the center is the pulpit, and the altar is to the side, you know. See, we both reverence the word and the Eucharist, but in Roman Catholicism, the Eucharist is central. That is the big piece. And that's going to hold us together. And that's going to bring, that's why you can have 1 billion Roman Catholics, you know, because you can disagree with each other and still go to Eucharist. Protestantism and evangelical, you can't have that because you split. You make new churches, you make new denominations. Like there's 700 kinds of Protestants and evangelicals, you know. So they don't have the Eucharist. I'll give you an image. It makes for a big tent. It's a big tent, you know. So it's the one place we've been really faithful to Jesus, and it holds us, and also it creates a big tent where people who disagree can still walk and eat together.
So thank you very much, Father, for this a beautiful explanation about the Eucharist. No, the Eucharist is really the center of our life. As other people, Eucharist is they put aside, they put something that is more worldly things, the center of their life. So this very helpful for us to know that our life is really centered in Eucharist. So Eucharist is really Jesus Himself present in the Eucharist. So I really believe that one is even in East Timor, some of my family they mention about the Protestants, some denominations going home and convince them, giving money, giving tuition for the tuition fees for the students. But I said, not don't fall into this temptation. This is a great temptation. This is a great evil that tries. So, Father, because you mentioned about this, I also heard in your talk, no, you mentioned about some phrase that what we dream alone remains a dream, but what we dream with others, dreams become reality. So in relation to the loneliness, so do we mean that we have to dream with others? So we have to be with others, we have to share the community. Is it right,
You know,
Father?
it's not that one is not so much for, you know, loneliness. That's more in terms of, you're being a priest or a minister in terms of having effect, you know. We use that at the Oblates. It's one of our slogans, you know, that basically, you know, for instance, you know, Ignatius, your founder, you know, well, we'll start with Jesus. Jesus came out, you know what the first thing he did? He gathered a group around. Okay. So when he went away, the group went on. Ignatius gathers a group. See, if you only work with your own cares, and when you die or you're gone, you get sick, it's over, you know. See, we have to connect with each other because this is the right word. Compassion is collective. Effective compassion is collective, you know. You can't change the world alone, you know. With other people, you can change the world, you know, like, see, and I think that's one of the downsides. I'm sure you have that expression in Asia too. We have here where people say today, I'm spiritual, but not religious, which means I want to do this alone. No, Christianity is you're on a group outing. You know, we're here to journey together, but also, okay, you're a Jesuit. You have been the most effective single religious community in history, you know, but notice it's a community. It's not one individual Jesuit, you know, together you have made a huge impact, you know, or the Oblates, our founder, Eugene de Maznon. It was interesting. He was an Austin priest. and he committed to working with the poor. So he started working with the poor and killing himself. And then he got sick and he almost died. Then he realized, if I died, this work is over. So then he started calling priests around him and he formed a religious community, you know. And now 200 years later, the work goes on, you know. See, that's what I mean by if you dream alone, you know, if you hadn't joined the Jesuits, say, I'm just going to be a charismatic person, I want to change the world and the church. Well, you're as big as your charism and your talent. But you know, you can make a spark, but you can't change the world, you know. Collectively, we can change the world, you know.
So, Father, thank you very much. This is it. I'm so grateful, so happy to have you on my podcast to share your vocation story, life experiences, and some of your beautiful thoughts and insights about faith, about religious life. So it really helps me and helps others to know more that our life is more important than the worldly things that is now going on. But the most important thing is the really Eucharist. You can search for different meanings, but the true meaning is in Catholic Church
Find
is
my book called Our One Act of Fidelity. Our
one
One Great
active
Act.
fidelity.
It's a book on the Eucharist.
Oh,
You know.
thank you very much. I think um this is the end of our conversation. Um, can you say something about a religious life, especially for the young men who are desiring to be a religious life? What message do you want to give to them, Father?
Okay, thanks. And I noticed that you have an SJ. You're a Jesuit?
Yes, but I'm a Jesuit.
Good. I have an inner Jesuit. No, I'll say two things. What would I say in terms of religious education? First of all, and I'm going to use my own example. You don't have to be attracted to this. I know a sister's order, and they use this for their advertising. They say, "Don't ask what's in it for you. Ask what's not in it for you." Yeah, it's always what's in it for me. No. Vocation, it's not what's in it for you, but also that it is a rich life. It's a very rich life. Celibacy is celibacy, and I don't play any games with it and so on. But you will not regret, that it's a rich life, and so you're not going to have one-to-one intimacy in marriage and so on, but you're going to have family all over. Everybody's family. I'm looking at you right now. You're a brother. You're my brother. You're a continent away and so on. We're part of the same family. And so and maybe say this. Maybe this is more practical. I always worried that I'd be lonely, so that you don't have like you don't have a wife and kids. You're going to be lonely. It's been the opposite. Most priests, they face burnout. They're trying to get away, to have some solitude. The last thing you have to worry about is loneliness. You have to worry about that you don't burn out from too much stuff. But that I was naive. You're going to be lonely. It's going to be lonely as a priest. That you're not lonely. You're oftentimes trying to get away, to have some quiet time to yourself and so on. Your lives, they're rich. They're full of everything, and they're full of important things. You're not. I don't want to denigrate other occupations, but like you're working with people's souls and their hearts and their problems and so on. You're touching life all the time.
So, Father, I think it's really important to ask, sorry, what do you do when you are lonely? And what is your message to the religious, what to do when we are lonely, Father?
that's an excellent spiritual question. It's an excellent psychological question. What do I do? And what do you do humanly? Well, at one level, you simply have to endure. Like you asked about times. There's times I've fallen in love. It's been very, very painful. You just have to endure it. But then you also you seek help in community. You seek help in you're not in it alone. I sometimes feel sorry for diocesan priests. They don't have community. As religious, we have community. So and sometimes you just have to seek help. Henry Nouwen, who I think was a saint at our time, but Henry Nouwen sometimes fell in love so violently, and he couldn't do anything, that he ended up in a clinic for clinical depression. And yet it made him this powerful wounded healer. But he said, just sometimes you just endure, and you find humans thing that can help you, and the season passes, and then you get to another season again. But there isn't I don't have a cheap answer for you. Do this. When your heart is aching, there's no medication you can take or whatever. Sometimes just say, I'm going to endure. And you got to, Jesus, my dad used that expression, said, Jesus sweated blood. I like that image. Said, sometimes to be faithful, you just have to sweat blood, and it comes out the other side okay, but I know it sounds like a stoic answer, but it's like literally, sometimes you just have to endure. And Henry Nouwen is a great line. Henry Nouwen says, and he wrote this in a clinic, where he's in a clinic for clinical depression. He said, I learned, he said, that my heart is stronger than my wounds and my aching. He said, the heart in the end is stronger than your wounds and your aching. You'll land on your feet again. Well, and thank you for the work you're doing. You're young. You're doing some great work. I'm going to pray that your work goes well.
Thank you very much, Father.
That you have how many years till your ordination? Do you know?
Oh, Father, I'm still in my philosophy studies, so it's still
Okay,
long to go.
You have ways to go.
So I had Father James Martins on my podcast.
Okay.
And I asked about him, about you. Father James, I am so interested on Father Ron, because you had an interview with him. So it's very interesting to know about Father Ron, because his insight, his idea is very excellent. And so Father James endorsed me your email. So I'm very grateful, Father, for your time and to say yes to me, even very, very far and different time zones, but you still make time for me. So thank you very much, Father. I pray for you and pray for me too, to be more successful
I
in
will.
this journey.
I will. You sound like you're doing some great work, and I was very happy to have this chat with you.
Thank you, Father.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Father.
Bye.
Good
Bye
night
then.
there, Father.
Good night. Thanks.
And